Hola, soy Jack Perkins. Bienvenidos a Biografía. De todos los títulos posibles que alguien puede recibir, ¿cómo les gustaría ser conocidos? ¿Como amo y señor de los clanes y las tierras? ¿Conquistador del Imperio Británico? ¿O su excelencia el presidente vitalicio? Nada mal. Epítetos como estos sugieren majestuosidad, poder y además una enorme popularidad. Por supuesto, el hombre que ostentaba todos estos títulos no era tan popular. Este hombre había urgido estos grandiosos nombres y los había reclamado para sí mismo. En todo el mundo causaba risa la arrogante bufanada de este autoaclamado superhombre. Pero en su país natal, en Uganda, la gente no se reía, moría, asesinada sistemáticamente por una de las figuras más infames de este siglo, Idi Amin.
It is not my intention to be a president. It is the people who appointed me.
He is not somebody who used to lie awake at night thinking about saving life. He was a man who used to go to sleep having spent life.
Housewives were killed, playwrights were killed. Nobody was sacrosanct.
En los años 70, la gente al principio se divirtió y más tarde se horrorizó por Idi Amin Dada. Su bufonada pública y constantes payasadas ocultaban a un monstruo paranoico y despiadado.
He was a mix of different people, and that mix gave him the capacity to present endless different faces. One of jollity and banality, and yet another of tremendous cruelty.
He was great fun. He was entertainment when he wasn't killing.
Idi Amin, un monstruo disfrazado. Idi Amin nació en el seno de una familia guerrera en el remoto norte de Uganda, una región plagada constantemente por guerras tribales. Su pueblo, la etnia nubia Kagwa, era uno de los más belicosos y violentos de África. Esta cultura de violencia moldearía el futuro de Amin. Cuando los ingleses conquistaron Uganda en 1894, los nubios se convirtieron en los soldados perfectos para el nuevo ejército colonial.
The Nubians were tall, immensely strong, wonderful soldiers on parade, not endowed with great brains, certainly judged to be ideal soldiering material.
They did not want a person in the army who could use a knife, fork and spoon and pick up a teacup. They wanted illiterates, people who would obey.
Idi Amin provenía de una familia típica nubia. Su padre, Amin Dada, era policía y vivía con su joven esposa en Bombo, una ciudad militar fundada para los nuevos soldados. La pareja tuvo 2 hijos. Primero Ramadán y luego, alrededor de 1928, nació Idi. Incluso para un nubio, la complexión de Idi era excepcionalmente fuerte, destacándose desde una temprana edad.
Idi was a very active boy, full of energy. He was on the move all the time, and he loved sports.
Idi Amin fue criado como musulmán y asistió a la escuela islámica local. En el salón de clases era indócil e inquieto y abandonó la escuela aún sin saber leer y escribir. Sus grandes atributos eran su fuerza bruta y su astucia innata, los cuales él sabía que eran su única esperanza para un futuro. Utilizó estas habilidades para ganarse a los ingleses y a los 18 años se alistó en los rifles africanos del rey.
My brother decided he wanted to join the army. The British officers liked him, because he was big and strong.
El nuevo recluta pronto se enamoró de la disciplina militar, visto en estas raras imágenes. Este fue el principio de su enamoramiento de toda la vida con las ceremonias militares.
I remember Idi Amin extremely well. He was intensely loyal, he was smart, he was an extremely skilled rifle shot. He was a wonderful sportsman. He had a very good sense of humor. One couldn't have asked for a better person to have served with.
He's a great, powerful chap. He frightened the life out of me and many others.
Con una altura de 1,90 m, Amin era muy corpulento. Durante 9 años fue campeón de peso pesado en Uganda, sabiendo que con su tamaño podía obtener lo que quisiera.
That urge was in him to succeed at whatever cost. And if people got in his way, then he would be ruthless.
Amin estaba sediento por una guerra verdadera. Su regimiento fue enviado a Kenia para aplastar la rebelión de los famosos Mau Mau. Fue la más terrible guerra colonial de África y el peor lugar posible para complacer la naturaleza violenta de Amin.
The Mau Mau campaign was a fairly brutal campaign. And of course it was the first time that so many of these young soldiers had seen active service.
Cara a cara con el enemigo, Amin no mostró clemencia alguna. Fue la primera vez que saboreaba la muerte de su adversario. Amin había luchado bien. Con solo 30 años lo ascendieron a sargento mayor, el rango más alto para un africano.
In my view, and I think anybody who was there, any British people who were there would share my view, he really was quite unfitted to be anything beyond a sergeant major.
The British didn't want anybody who was African and educated to be in the officer class. They wanted people who essentially take orders from the British officers who were in charge at that time.
En 1961, esa política debió ser cambiada. Inglaterra decidió abandonar África, otorgando la independencia a Uganda.
We will be inspired by the prospect of an independent Uganda taking her place among the nations of the world and among the nations of the Commonwealth.
I remember when we were first told in 1960 or 61 that Uganda was going to be independent in 1962. It was a terrible shock. We simply saw that it wasn't going to work. It was doomed to failure. We were merely told that we had to find officers to take over from us. And we looked around, and of course there was very little choice. And there was nobody, in our view, who was suited to be an officer.
Desesperados, los ingleses acudieron a un hombre que sabían que no estaba calificado para el mando. Idi Amin era su mejor soldado y se convirtió en el primer oficial ugandés. Amin aún no sabía leer ni escribir y sabía poco sobre la vida fuera de las barracas.
When we left the bank, I offered him a lift back to barracks, and he said, "No, thank you very much, sir. I've got a little bit of shopping to do." And he came back to the barracks about 2 hours later with a broad grin on his face. And I said, "What on earth have you been up to?" And you look very pleased with yourself. He said, "Oh, I've just bought myself a new car. I bought myself 2 new suits. I've ordered all sorts of things." And I said, "Well, where on earth's the money coming from?" Oh, and he thought that a checkbook was merely a passport to untold riches.
Desde el primer momento que Amin saboreó el poder verdadero, se dedicó a abusar de él. Aún en un patrullaje de rutina para arrestar a ladrones de ganado, Amin fue excesivamente violento.
Idi was detailed off to go and sort this out and to get the cattle back. And they caught the rustlers. I understand that some were killed, 5 or 6. They were buried there and then.
Amin los había asesinado sin razón alguna. Debió ser juzgado por una corte marcial, pero Milton Obote, el futuro primer ministro de Uganda, dejó impune a Amin. Fue una decisión que lamentaría amargamente. 6 meses después, en octubre de 1962, Uganda obtuvo su independencia. Su ejército ahora estaba bajo el control de un asesino, y la oportunidad crucial para detener a Idi Amin había sido desperdiciada. Cuando los ingleses otorgaron la independencia a Uganda en 1962, dejaron atrás a un país sacudido por conflictos tribales. Y a los 4 años, Uganda estaba al borde de una guerra civil. En el ojo de la tormenta estaba Idi Amin, de 39 años para entonces. Había permanecido leal al primer ministro Obote, el hombre que lo había salvado de una corte marcial. Obote esperaba utilizar a su brutal jefe del ejército para destruir al popular rey de la tribu más grande de Uganda, el Kabaka.
It's been said that you would like to put an end to the Kabaka-ship. Is that so?
Obote buscaba un medio para atacar el palacio Kabaka. 4 años antes había salvado la carrera de Amin. Ahora había llegado el momento de exigir una retribución. Al antiguo comandante de Amin le preocupaba que la democracia de Uganda fuese destruida. En una reunión nocturna le pidió a Amin que no atacara.
He was worried about the situation in the country at that time because a power struggle was going on. He made it clear at this meeting that there was going to be a move against the Baganda and against the Kabaka, and that it was going to take place pretty quickly.
Cientos de soldados de Amin atacaron el palacio. Los guardias del Kabaka estaban en inferioridad numérica. No tenían oportunidad. Amin había aplastado la democracia de su nación y Obote se convirtió en un dictador.
How would you describe the situation now?
Getting quiet.
No fighting at the moment?
There hasn't been any fighting.
Except around the palace?
Around the palace there was no fighting.
De hecho, Idi Amin había encabezado una masacre. El rey logró huir a Londres, pero 2.000 miembros de su tribu fueron aniquilados y cientos más fueron lanzados vivos al Nilo. Amin se había convertido en un asesino de masas.
The 66 crisis was the beginning of the culture of dictatorship and the culture of violence which was to sweep this country for another 30 years.
Amin sabía que el poder de Obote dependía de su apoyo incondicional, pero ya se estaba cansando de obedecer órdenes.
His soldiers worshipped him. Whatever he did for himself, the soldiers came first. He wouldn't eat unless they were eating. He wouldn't take a bed unless they had a bed. This impressed me.
Hacia fines de la década de los años 60, Amin encontró un aliado inesperado. Israel deseaba establecer un bastión en África y Uganda necesitaba armas modernas. Sin embargo, los israelíes no se fiaban del arrogante Obote y secretamente comenzaron a ayudar financieramente las ambiciones políticas de Amin. Amin lanzó su carrera política con el apoyo de Israel, utilizando su jovialidad para cautivar al pueblo de Uganda.
When he would come home, People would travel from near and far to see him. He was a man of the people, of the people.
El primer ministro Obote temía el creciente poder de Amin. Intentó destituirlo como jefe del ejército, pero Amin simplemente era demasiado popular y no pensaba abandonar el cargo. Para 1970 ya era inevitable un enfrentamiento violento.
What they had planned was the arrest of Idi Amin and get rid of him once and all. But Obote, being a coward, didn't want to be there when it happened, so he arranged for it whilst he was in Singapore.
Obote viajó a Singapur para asistir a una cumbre internacional y para los ojos del mundo todo en su país estaba normal. Pero mientras discutía con Edward Heath, el primer ministro de Inglaterra, Obote envió un telegrama secreto a Uganda ordenando el arresto de Idi Amin. Lo que él ignoraba era que Amin tenía una aventura con su secretaria, quien interceptó el mensaje entregándoselo a su amante. Obote no volvería a ver su patria durante 9 años.
The situation is tense in this conference. It's tense in this conference between me and Mr. Heath. It is tense in Singapore between me and Mr. Heath.
El golpe de estado de Amin había comenzado. Al amanecer, sus soldados tomaron Kampala con facilidad y Amin se dirigió a la nación.
All people are to be and to report for work as usual. Further information and direction will be released as the need arises. Long live the Republic of Uganda.
Anas ya jakutu ilwagi bamare. La kanamu kamana alijaga bamare ta prison la kanamu tala fenomeni filana. Kaman jakutu kaman prison ni anas ya kutu mogudro kaman. Msanu ya baagi kidmari.
We thought he was straight out of the movies, you know, John Wayne. You know, we liked him as kids.
Amin was seen as a force for good. And indeed, when the coup came and he took over, I think many of us thought, oh, why not? I mean, he'd probably do a better job than Obote.
Uganda are very intelligent people, and also they are very good in administration, and this credit goes also to British, because to Great Britain, because they are the people who handed over the country in hand of Uganda.
So that means the end of communist influence in this country.
How nice to have this rather simple fellow after Obote, who Obote had been very calculating kind of person. I think everybody sort of saw it as a bit of light comedy.
There was a point about Amin which a lot of people have failed to realise. He was, and he suddenly discovered it anyway, that he was a good politician. He could manipulate.
Amin salió de gira alrededor del mundo para aumentar su popularidad en el país. Una de sus primeras paradas fue en una lejana escuela católica en Mamasegali.
He made a speech, and he had a line at that time, which something like a comedian has a hit line. My government is a government of action, not of words. Amin looked at this and said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to build a swimming pool." He said, "Well, why don't you get on with it?" I said, "Well, there are some problems here and there." He said, "You finish it, you just finish it." So from then on, of course, I was in the clear, because I could say that I was doing it by command of His Excellency the President.
I think he must have realized at a very early stage that the job was totally beyond him. He rushed around from one corner of the country to the other. He made great announcements that this was going to happen and this was going to be done, and new hospitals were going to be built and schools were going to appear here. He had no conception at all on how to run a country.
Amin se deleitaba con su nuevo poder. Decidido a gobernar Uganda él solo, clausuró definitivamente el parlamento, silenciando a toda la oposición.
Basically, his rule was by the power of the gun. His was a military dictatorship, pure and simple.
When Amin took power, the first decree he made was the Kondo decree. That is, anybody caught with a pistol or a slashing instrument bent on killing was himself to be killed.
The killings started very, very soon after he came to power. Many hundreds of people, including many old and dear friends of mine who I'd served with for many years, were killed, were butchered very, very soon after he came to power.
Sin pérdida de tiempo, el jovial líder de Uganda había revelado su verdadera naturaleza. Comenzó ejecutando sistemáticamente a todos sus opositores. Luego, Idi Amin se volvería contra toda la nación. En cuanto tomó el poder en 1971, un Idi Amin de 44 años comenzó una brutal purga de sus enemigos. A todo lo largo del Nilo, sus escuadrones de la muerte comenzaron a asesinar soldados de tribus rivales. Los soldados eran tan insensibles como su líder y utilizaban la escuela católica como su lugar de ejecución. No les importaba si los niños escuchaban los disparos. Los enemigos de Amin eran sacados a rastras de sus casas y lanzados en la parte trasera de un auto. Eran llevados a un muelle abandonado sobre el Nilo. Allí se les hacía un solo disparo en la cabeza y sus cuerpos eran lanzados al agua.
We did get glimpses of long black cars going down to the quay there and hearing the gun being fired, and we knew pretty well what was going on. And it was pretty horrific, really, especially as we couldn't really do anything much about it. Some of the bodies were getting stuck and sticking out of the water and things like that. The whole thing was very unpleasant. So from then on, the honeymoon period was over. We realized that we were dealing with a very unpleasant gentleman indeed.
Los reporteros que cubrían a Amin comprendieron que habían sido seducidos por un maestro de la actuación.
I think the greatest difficulty everybody had in dealing with Amin was that his launch pad was one of avuncular, rather banal, absurd charm, and everybody said, what a jolly guy to find in charge. It was very difficult then to get away from that and say, hang on, this guy is an utter brute. Undress him and he's a repulsive ogre.
Amin sabía que solo podría controlar al pueblo manteniendo contento a su ejército. Les prometió armas sofisticadas, una promesa que sería difícil de cumplir. Pensó que podría obtenerlas de sus mejores y más viejos amigos, los británicos. Viajó a Londres, pero no le avisó a nadie que llegaba, sino 5 minutos antes de aterrizar. Amin había ido en busca de armas, pero cuando los ingleses le preguntaron por qué había ido, les dijo que simplemente deseaba conocer a la reina. Afortunadamente ella estaba en el palacio.
The Queen was standing with her coffee cup looking up to this huge giant, about 14 inches taller than her. And she put this question to him and said, could you tell me what do we owe this great honor of your unexpected visit? And Amin just roared with laughter, which rather startled the Queen. And then when pressed a bit further, he said, well, in Uganda, Your Majesty, it is very difficult to find a pair of size 14 brown shoes.
It's also reported that you're trying to buy arms over here. It all sounds a bit militant for an apparently non-aligned country. Aren't you being a bit aggressive?
No, I am only buying those for the defense of my country.
En una visita al primer ministro británico, Amin halló su primer obstáculo. Quedó atónito al saber que Inglaterra no le vendería armas. Como antiguo oficial inglés, Amin se sintió traicionado por un país para el cual había servido y ahora quería venganza. De pronto, volvió a descubrir sus raíces islámicas y encontró nuevos aliados.
It was then that this curious relationship started between him and Gaddafi, two fairly eccentric characters, to put it mildly. Certainly, Amin felt that this was the answer to all his prayers. Here was this chap who shared his religious views, had what seemed to be unlimited money, talked grandly about military might and so on, which was music to Amin's ears.
Most of the African countries have been helped by the Soviet Union because Americans refused to help. Therefore, the Soviet Union came to rescue the people of Arab world.
La nueva táctica de Amin dio resultado. Libia y Arabia Saudita acordaron financiar su régimen, pero solo si rompía sus lazos con su enemigo común, Israel. Ansioso por obtener dinero, Amin rápidamente estuvo de acuerdo y con solo una semana de aviso se ordenó a todos los israelíes que abandonaran Uganda, incluso algunos constructores que no habían terminado de construir un rascacielos. Luego, Amin cobró venganza de sus amigos más antiguos, los ingleses. Casi todos los negocios en Uganda eran propiedad de ciudadanos ingleses de India, conocidos como los asiáticos. En un decreto que dejó atónitos a todos, dio un ultimátum a los asiáticos. Debían abandonar el país en un plazo de 3 meses.
They must sell everything they have between now and the 90 days from Monday. This is what I have said.
I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in those shops is run by the Ugandans. You just wait after 3 months.
What will you do to them?
Okay, you will see.
You said you wanted Uganda.
I think they will not sit comfortable here in Uganda. I will tell you this. I must actually tell you the truth.
Con 50.000 refugiados por ser enviados a Inglaterra, Amin saboreó el momento mientras humillaba al embajador inglés.
You've said you wanted to teach Britain a lesson, President. Why is that?
And that is now lesson I am teaching the British. I am teaching now the lesson because I am correcting them from the mistake they had made. But the British are my best friends.
I wish I understood that, Excellency.
I have now got to report what you have decided, and I would only like to conclude by thanking you for your friendly references to the British personally and for your hospitality.
Amin fue fiel a su palabra. A los 90 días, los asiáticos fueron expulsados y cumplió su promesa de entregar el control de la economía a los ugandeses.
It is stunning. And all of a sudden, it happened. Ugandans were asked that, hey guys, the shops are here. Here's the key. So they went in there, and for the first time, they were actually sitting behind these shops. And all the Asian money was their money. All the Asian property was there. The guys had come to town.
La euforia fue pasajera. Sin los asiáticos, todos los negocios, desde la tienda más pequeña hasta los ferrocarriles de la nación, se hundieron en la bancarrota. Idi Amin había ido demasiado lejos y Uganda estaba a punto de pagar el precio. A los 47 años, Idi Amin había convertido el Estado ugandés en su reino privado, derrochando los escasos recursos de Uganda en su ejército, sus 3 esposas y sus 20 hijos. Al principio fue divertido, pero después, mientras Uganda se hundía en el caos económico, el pueblo comenzó a volverse en su contra. Pero eso no le importaba a Amin, quien se recluyó en su propia versión de la isla de la fantasía.
There's no doubt that his rise to president of the country caused a complete change in his personality. He very soon became a megalomaniac. I think he realized deep down that he was making an awful mess of things, but he simply didn't know where to turn.
Aunque Amin había surgido con el gobierno inglés, no podía abandonar sus raíces coloniales. En 1975 reclutó como su mano derecha a un antiguo espía inglés, Bob Astles, a pesar de que Astles había trabajado para los enemigos de Amin. Le regaló a Astles una villa junto a la suya y ambos hombres se hicieron virtualmente inseparables.
You see, this chap, Bob Astles, his European sidekick, who in many ways was a sort of contorted British railway porter. He was the sort of person who would never have held any sort of office in this country, and yet held supreme power in some extraordinary way.
I did not work with Amin until I was called on duty. As a Uganda citizen, I had no choice, and furthermore, I was only too happy to come into the throng.
One time he would arrive and Astles would say, Amin's seriously bonkers, he's got syphilis, he's not a man to be trusted, he's killing people. And the next, you'd arrive and you say, look at our glorious revolution, look at what has become of this country, do you see what our great leader has produced? They were as mad as each other.
He could trust me, he knew it, but there was something wrong in the chemistry. Who knows, one day you'd be talking to an old English gentleman. The next day it was always a telephone. Never to your face. I go to the telephone, and what do I get? This is Amin in a temper.
Rodeado de títeres, Amin necesitaba chivos expiatorios para la economía de Uganda que colapsaba, y una vez más recurrió a su patrón de violencia, pero esta vez fue peor que nunca.
All of a sudden it dawns on people that, hey, something funny is happening here. He was just killing everybody. People started getting frightened. You'd wake up in the morning, the guys next door are not there. So then people started getting a sense of what their mean dictatorship was.
We had stories of people who are skeletons living side by side with bodies of people who had died. They were in places where there was no water. When they still had some urine, that's what they drank. And then they would be told, you know, hit the head of the person next door with a hammer on the head until he died.
Assassinations, executions without trial, people disappearing. It was a time of great destruction. Destruction of people, destruction of property, destruction generally of the social fabric of this country.
The thing about Amin is you could ask him to do anything. The news desks in Europe wanted to see him swimming the Nile. They weren't really hungry for pictures of him carving people up because they knew they'd never get them. And because it was so difficult to get at what he was really doing, it was such a repressive situation, that bit never really got portrayed, and it was a very, very hard job indeed, overturning the avuncular Amin and revealing the vicious dictator that existed beneath.
He had this kind of magnetism about him. I've heard that Hitler had something of this, and I suspect that Amin must have had something too. There was a sort of personal aura about him that made it difficult for you to believe that he was as brutal as we knew he actually was.
Idi Amin estaba masacrando a su pueblo por decenas de millares, pero el mundo exterior aún lo veía como un dictador jovial en un país lejano. Parecía que Amin siempre se salía con la suya. Desfilaba como si fuese invencible, se otorgaba medallas por guerras que nunca había librado y su reino de terror aún continuaba.
It is not my intention to be a president, but it is the people who appointed me to be the president of the Republic of Uganda. The same people have requested me to be the life president of Uganda for what I have done for the country.
Durante un tiempo pareció que Idi Amin realmente sería el presidente vitalicio de Uganda. Luego, en junio de 1976, cometió un error fatal, permitiendo que secuestradores de la OLP que retenían a rehenes israelíes aterrizaran en el aeropuerto de Entebbe. Disfrutando la atención, Amin alardeaba que liberaría a los rehenes y luego los retuvo en el terminal durante días. Los israelíes llegaron al punto de saturación. Primero, Amin los había traicionado apoyando a los árabes y ahora jugaba con vidas israelíes. Había llegado la hora de vengarse. En un ataque sorpresa, comandos israelíes asaltaron Entebbe. Amin y su ejército fueron tomados totalmente por sorpresa. Israel celebró con la liberación de los rehenes.
Field Marshal Idi Amin cooperated with the hijackers by threatening the lives of innocent passengers.
Idi Amin ya no era divertido, era un terrorista. Con su fracaso en Entebbe, Amin había sembrado las semillas de su propia destrucción. El rescate israelí en Entebbe de 1976 humilló a Idi Amin frente al mundo entero. Estaba furioso y mientras continuaba con su reinado, descargó su ira con otro bacanal de carnicería. Finalmente, alguien se atrevió a alzar la voz. El respetado arzobispo Yenani Lugun comenzó a criticar a Idi Amin desde el púlpito.
Lugun was a decent man who in a quiet and dignified way preached that there were very terrible things happening in his country, and with some courage he spoke out about them. But he was a marked man.
Amin fingió indiferencia frente a las palabras del arzobispo. Pero el 15 de febrero de 1977, 2 días después que fueron fotografiados juntos, el arzobispo fue arrestado secretamente y juzgado sumarialmente en el hotel preferido de Amin.
The vice president, who had said, what should we do with these people? It's almost biblical. At which the soldiers assembled, shouted, kill them, kill them. These people were then taken away and killed. It was then dressed up rather pathetically as a car accident.
How it turned over, and then you see the back of the car was that way. And when I came up, this one I did see with the back.
Archbishop with the 2 ministers, there are 4 in the car with him, and then they had the accident. We all were shocked.
El asesinato del arzobispo fue el detonante. Amin al fin fue condenado mundialmente. El dictador sonriente fue desenmascarado como un asesino en masa. Para 1979, Amin se había convertido en una vergüenza internacional de 52 años.
Whatever any international community, especially the Western press, giving bad image and a picture of Uganda, that is a completely nonsense. Uganda is very peaceful and Uganda does not violate any human right.
El mundo estaba harto de Amin, pero en la estela de Vietnam, ningún gobierno occidental estaba dispuesto a intervenir. Quedó en manos de Tanzania, uno de los países más pobres del mundo, acometer contra Amin. El presidente Julius Nyerere siempre lo había detestado y atacó cuanto supo que Amin estaba en su momento más débil. El una vez poderoso ejército de Amin se hizo pedazos. Mientras las tropas de Tanzania avanzaban, la gente de Uganda se volcó a las calles para saludar a sus libertadores. Para abril de 1979, Idi Amin aún no se daba por vencido. Se retiró a las barracas Ginger, donde su ilustre carrera militar había comenzado 20 años atrás.
This is the main assault on Ginger now. We've just crossed the dam, the first Western journalist to get across, right just behind the advancing troops.
Fue un patético último intento. El alucinante Amin no lograba comprender que sus días de gloria en el ejército se habían reducido a esto. Abandonado por sus viejos amigos, Amin ahora se encontraba derrotado y solo. Su reinado de 8 años había llegado a un fin humillante. Amin huyó a Libia, uno de los pocos aliados que le quedaban.
I traveled on the tanks most of the way and saw Amin's helicopter disappear into the beyond.
Coward. He was a coward. He just left us. He never took part in that war at all.
When Amin was finally thrown out, the whole country, and I must say the whole world, drew a deep breath. Said, thank God, that's over.
Idi Amin dejó tras de sí un país en ruinas. Al abrir las cámaras de tortura, se reveló el verdadero horror del reinado de Amin.
I went into the main secret police headquarters. There were bloodstains, there was terrible smells, terrible evidence of great suffering, extracted toenails. I can't go into it. It was just absolutely awful. It was the bloodiest hell I think I've ever been into as a correspondent.
Idi Amin asesinó a 500,000 de ugandeses y nunca fue castigado por sus crímenes. Desde 1980, Arabia Saudita le ha otorgado asilo en recompensa por su ayuda a la causa árabe.
He must get his swimming every day. He gets his food. He has women sent out to him from Uganda. He knows he has no problems about leadership. I dare say he's content.
I found the cup on the sugar cane.
En Uganda, el legado de Idi Amin aún persigue a la nación que masacró. Fue un producto de los peores aspectos que el colonialismo tuvo que ofrecer. Una combinación profana de brutalidad y ambición desnuda.
I feel guilty about my contacts with Amin. I think they were altogether too jolly. I don't think that I tackled him as the ogre I now know him to have been. But I can only say that at the time, it all felt incredibly unreal.
The sad thing is that we respected Idi. We trained him. We made him what he is, in fact, or what he was.
I now feel he'll be a sort of big, aging, graying buffoon. And I think maybe that's even better punishment than to bring him here and shoot him.
En la obra de Woody Allen, Hannah y sus hermanas, un intelectual dice que está cansado que los historiadores pregunten ¿cómo pudo ocurrir el holocausto nazi de Hitler? La verdadera pregunta sobre este personaje es, dada la naturaleza humana, ¿por qué no han ocurrido más holocaustos? Durante los años 70 en Uganda, la espeluznante combinación de sadismo y poder de Idi Amin hicieron estragos, demostrándonos una vez más lo peor de lo que puede ser capaz el ser humano. Para Biografía, soy Jack Perkins. Hasta la próxima.